Some people might be really mad about this video. I'm not here to convince you. I'm just here to tell you how I feel. If you saw my Daft Punk tier list video that I came out with a couple of years ago, you may remember me saying something along the lines that Discovery is better than Homework and no one can tell you otherwise. I'm about to tell you otherwise. When I made that video, I was kind of just getting into Daft Punk. Daft Punk has just broken up and I decided to listen to all their albums because before that I'd only listened to Ram, and so I was kind of very hyped on the idea of Discovery because I mean it's a great album. It came out in 2001, way ahead of its time, kind of reinvented the sound of like dance music and electronic music. Everybody loves that thing, and for a good reason. I think the vibe of it is very unique. It's very futuristic, very spacey. It kind of makes you feel like you're just traveling through space, honestly. And then obviously their 2005 album, Human After All, is kind of a mess in my opinion. I kind of call it obnoxious electronic rock music. I think it's very repetitive, and that's kind of ironic because of what I'm about to say about Homework. Not a big fan of the album, but there are some bangers. Emotion's a great song. And then obviously Random Access Memories is a fantastic album. However, I can only listen to that thing probably once front to back every other month or so. Like, I can't really come back to that thing that often. Their 1997 album, Homework, is my favorite album of all time, and it kind of took me a little bit of time to kind of come to that realization, but I've been on that realization for about a year now. Not only do I think it's my favorite Daft Punk album, I think it's the best Daft Punk album. There's kind of three things I think that like kind of stand out to me on this album. The first being the overall vibe of the album, I think is just really cool. Okay, the entire album kind of just feels like you're out clubbing, you know, you're out in the town kind of traveling to different clubs, and you're just like at these nightclubs and you're just vibing and dancing around. Even just from the start it feels like that with Daft and Direct. It kind of feels like you're almost walking into this club, you know, when it's like filtering in, having like the drums come in, you know, it feels like you're finally getting let into this club that you've been waiting outside for the past hour or so. I don't know. I've never been night clubbing before, so I don't know how long it takes. This album feels super ahead of its time with a lot of the sampling techniques and a lot of the compositions, in my opinion. And that's the second thing that I think that makes this album so great, in my opinion, is the compositions themselves. This album, I think, gets a lot of flack for its repetitiveness, to which I will say, you are listening to it in the wrong way. If you are someone who thinks that this album is way too repetitive, I don't know what to tell you, man. Just stop trying to dig too deep into it. Just vibe, okay? That's what I have to say, honestly. If you're someone who thinks that this album's too repetitive, just vibe, man. Just fucking vibe. Put this on in some headphones, dance around in your room, act like you're in a nightclub. Get your friends together, get a disco ball, get some lights, dude. Throw this album on front to back. I guarantee you're gonna have a great time. I haven't done it, but it sounds like a great time, honestly. This album is not meant for just like sitting around and listening to it, okay? This album is meant to just bounce to, dance to, do anything to, honestly. I feel like it's kind of funny that this album is called Homework, because Homework is kind of meant to be this thing that's not super fun. At least I never enjoyed doing homework, but I can guarantee you if I listen to this album while doing homework, I'm gonna have a good time. I don't do homework anymore because I'm not in school. If I was in school, I'd listen to this album while doing homework. Some of the bass lines on these things are just so groovy. I'm pretty sure most of the bass is live recorded because the two guys of Daft Punk were in like a rock band before they started Daft Punk, so I'm pretty sure they definitely know how to play like a live instrument or two. And like the bass line for things like dude, the Phoenix bass line makes me feel so good every single time I hear it. The bass line for Burning, whenever that comes in, I just it feels so incredible. Listen, okay, I feel like a lot of people were gonna say, Daft Punk, you don't need to say Around the World 144 times in your song and make it 7 minutes long. But the thing that makes this album so great is that they did. None of the drum beats in this thing are super crazy. I mean, look, this album came out in 1997, okay? You gotta kind of put it in that context as well, even though I do feel like it sounds ahead of its time. Like I said, I put this album on to dance, okay? I don't need to be listening to these black MIDI drum beats thinking, oh my god, this is incredible. I just need a basic kick and a basic snare to tell me when to jump and when to land, you know? And this album gives that to me. And there are times where like the drums get a little intricate and they feel really cool. I like the drum beat at the beginning of Phoenix with like little hi-hat, like the I'm not really doing a good job explaining that sound. Also, the hi-hats in the funk is really cool too. So like while most of the drum beats are just like kick and snares, basic kind of drum patterns. There are moments in this album where the drums get a little bit more intricate, and those are nice little treats in the album. I think the third thing that makes this album so special to me, and why I think this album in particular is better than Discovery in my opinion, is the sampling. I feel like Daft Punk doesn't rely too much on sampling for this album. Of course they're sampling all over this thing, but they don't really rely on it too much. Like I said, there's like the live bass and a bunch of other instrumentation happening sometimes, and there's even some songs that, as far as I'm aware, don't have any samples at all, like Rock and Roll and Rolling and Scratching, I don't think have any samples. But the songs that do have samples, I think is a very unique, I think they use a very unique way of sampling. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Daft Punk was the first people to do this thing called micro sampling, which kind of revolutionized the electronic music genre, I think. I think a lot of people started doing micro sampling after they heard Daft Punk do it in this album. What I mean by micro sampling, it's like, instead of taking like a full 4-bar sample from a song, you take little snippets, like maybe like 1 second, half a second snippets, maybe even shorter than that, and then you craft a song using those short snippets. It's something that I do in my music now because of Daft Punk. It's so unique, and I don't know how they kind of came up with it. I think the sampling in this album is better than the sampling in Discovery, because if you listen to some of the samples in Discovery, they kind of do the thing where they take the 4-bar sample and they don't really do much for it. Like, listen to the sample for Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. The sample's cool, okay, but they didn't really do anything too crazy to it. But you compare that to the song High Fidelity, and you watch a sample breakdown of High Fidelity, it's a complete night and day difference, and that's why I think Homework is better. High Fidelity, for those of you that don't know, is a song that is kind of crafted only using samples of Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel, and there's also a couple samples from The Stranger in there, and it's just absolutely, it's insane that they pulled this thing off. The entire song is made just of samples, except for the drum beat. Now, I'm not saying that there's not like good instances of micro sampling on Discovery. I mean, look at Face to Face, for example. That album, that song is a sampling masterpiece. Some of the times I feel like you could watch a sample breakdown of this album of Homework and think, okay, maybe they were just getting kind of guessing and they got lucky, you know. It's like, I feel like the sample of on Phoenix, the way they sampled that, kind of just like, okay, you guys just kind of picked a random thing and just kind of got lucky with it. But then, like I said, you listen to High Fidelity and there's no luck involved in there. That's like all complete skill. And then also the sample in Burning, it's such a small, short snippet of a song, but it really makes the song Burning. If you don't know, the sample is like the I think that's the only sample in that song, and I feel like that one sound makes that song so freaking unique to me. If it didn't have that sound in that song, the song would just feel like any other dance track. But because it has that one sample in there, it makes it sound way different, way cooler, and such a cool vibe. I don't know what it is about that one sample, but that sample makes the song for me. Another really cool instance of sampling on this album is Indo Silver Club, where like kind of the entire track is built off this like kind of loop that they took from this one song, and the loop is so like the actual sample itself is like probably shorter than a second or something like that, but probably just a second, and they took that 1 second of music and they made it their entire song, and it sounds so freaking cool. It's almost one of those things where like you hear the sample and you're like, how the hell did you even hear that and go, oh yeah, we can just loop that and have it be like our song. I highly recommend looking up a like a sample breakdown of this album if you're interested in it. I find sampling to be super cool. I think sampling is my favorite production technique ever in music. I love hearing different ways that artists can utilize samples. When it comes to sampling, this album is incredibly unique, especially because it came out in 1997. I don't think a lot of electronic musicians were using samples like this in this way in 1997. But I wasn't born yet, so I don't really know. Those are the three main reasons why I like this album so much. And when I try to figure out a way to best articulate why I think this album is better than Discovery in my opinion, and why I sort of connect with this album so much more than I connect with Discovery, I think those are the three reasons. I'm not here to say that Discovery is a bad album. Discovery is a fantastic album. You can catch me any day of the week listening to Discovery. But if I'm listening to Discovery 3 days of the week, I'm listening to Homework 4 days of the week.